Welcome everyone. We are waiting for 5 o'clock straight up to get started. We look forward to seeing you join the group. We've already got 50 people in and there's 250 registered. So we'll talk in a moment. All right, everyone. We're so glad to have you. We've got over 100 participants involved right now. Karen, would you get us started with the housekeeping?
Absolutely. Welcome everyone and good afternoon to today's webinar being hosted by Expedient, the IT Leaders Indianapolis Group, and the Indy CIO Network. We are joined today by an amazing group of leaders from the Indy area who are going to share their insight into the current state of affairs. Doug will provide more information on that in just a few moments. We anticipate the session to last close to 60 minutes, but we will have certainly leave time for questions and answers at the end. My name is Karen Ianta, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I would like to go over some of the housekeeping items that Doug mentioned. All of our panelists at current attendees are in listen-only mode, and audio is being provided by accessing your computer or the telephone using the numbers in your registration link. Today's webinar will be recorded, and we will send a follow-up email with that recording link, usually within the next day or so. You'll see a chat panel at the bottom of your screen or a questions and answer, a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you hover over that, that's where you can chat and type your questions, and we will follow up at the end of the session. We'd love to know your thoughts and ask that you participate in a few poll questions today. We've enabled the anonymous feature, so all of your responses will not be attributed to anyone in particular. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Doug and Jeff Tunn. So take it away, gentlemen.
Sounds good. Your hosts today are Jeff Tunn and I. I don't see Jeff on the list. Would you mind checking to see if Jeff might be a participant, Karen, while we move forward?
I think he is. I'm going to move him as a panelist.
Okay, great. Let me introduce myself then. My name is Doug Thies. I'm the founder of IT Leaders Indy, which is a leadership-focused peer group here in Indianapolis. We've been running for 3.5 years, and we meet bi-monthly at the Expedient Data Center. We run a group for directors, managers, VPs of IT, and CIOs. We really focus on the skills of leadership. As I always say, most of us have been promoted from stellar individual contributors to some level of incompetence as a leader, and that's really what we focus on, is improving that. I'm also the Director of Market Strategy for Expedient, and Expedient is the nation's leading enterprise cloud provider. I want to thank Expedient for Karen's time and my time, and for underwriting tonight's event and all the IT Leaders peer group meetings. As I mentioned, 250 people are registered for this webinar, and current count looks like we're over 130 participants to get started, and that number is rising rapidly. You can consider this a virtual happy hour if you like. So enjoy a beverage while you listen to the group. Remember, a virtual happy hour is not the same as drinking at home alone. So we're there with you. Remember that. As Karen mentioned, we may go longer than an hour. So if that is the case, please bear with us if you can. Jeff, do you mind talking a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, and thanks, Doug. I appreciate you kicking it off while I struggled to get on the right link. So, you know, technology is challenging after doing it for 40 years. So welcome, everybody. I really appreciate everybody joining. Doug and I were both just overwhelmed with the response of over 200 people registering for this event, so thank you. I'm Jeff Tunn. I'm the founder of the Indy CIO Network. We've been going strong for almost 10 years now. A group of CIOs and senior IT leaders here in Central Indiana. We grew from the auspicious beginning of 5 of us gathered around a table over lunch 10 years ago to a mailing list now that exceeds 300. And we appreciate everybody being here, being on this call, and looking forward to this conversation with some outstanding panelists. So, Doug, back to you. You're on mute, Doug.
Doug, you're on mute.
Thanks for the signals. Thanks. Here's the agenda, everyone. We are going to start out with some polls to the audience. So Karen, can you bring up that first question? All right, we want to make sure these polls are working right. Participants, please answer the question. What are you wearing right now? You know, etiquette for conference calls, we've all gotten a little bit more familiar with it these days. We'll give you a few more seconds here. About half of you have voted so far. Please respond quickly. All right, I'm going to end the polling right now. And it looks like most everybody's wearing pants today. We're glad to hear it. Now, none of the above could have a couple of different interpretations on that, and 7% of us are not wearing any of the above. So that's quite interesting, I would say. All right, looks like the polling is working good. Do you mind shutting, or can you close that down, Karen?
Sure.
Great, thank you. In addition, all right, there we go. In addition, oops, there we go. In addition, beyond the polling, we've got 4 questions for you beyond this fun one to get started. The panelists are then going to answer some questions on leadership during the COVID-19 crisis. We've got 5 questions. Then we're going to take questions from the audience. If you would like, and we would encourage you to do so, please talk about this on social media. Take a couple of screenshots if you would, and use the hashtags itleadersindy and Indy CIO network. Excellent. Let's talk about our panelists who've joined us today. We've got Jeff Dodson, CIO of UnitedHealth One, who is in the healthcare insurance business. Jeff, we're glad to have you. We've got Nirav Shah, the CIO of Republic Airways, who obviously is in the airline business. We have Glenn Keller, Director of IT at Countrymark. He's the IT leader over in the energy business at Countrymark. They are an oil and they are a gas and diesel refinery. We have Laura Larimer, the IT officer for Indianapolis Public Schools, which we all know is part government and part education. Laura, thank you for joining us. And finally, we have Jay Lytle, who's the CIO of Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana, who is our not-for-profit representative. Thank you so much for all of us joining you. Now, if we can get started with the first poll, please, Karen, bring that one up if you would. Question is, my organization had the right IT components and work from home experience in place.
Oh, I'm having some trouble with this. Let me see what's going on.
All right, let me see if I can help any. Any luck?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure. Let me. Okay.
All right, this is our first poll question. Karen, can you move on to the next one?
Oh, this is my, can you see this? That my organization had the right IT components and work from home?
We see, what are you wearing right now again?
Oh, that's not right. Okay.
There we go. Great. Here we go. All right. The answer is yes, universally. Wow, that's quite fascinating. One response. Audience, if you would please respond to this. All right, 60% responded so far. Give a few more seconds here for any other responses. Wow, very impressive. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling here. 88% say yes and 12% say no. That's quite impressive. Let's go to the next question. Karen, if you would, please.
Okay.
All right, my team and I are working from home. A few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end polling now. 77% say yes. 22% are split. Some are, some are not. And 2% are at work and doing their work appropriately. Quite interesting. All right, let's move to the next one. Poll question number 3. Most of the managers, directors, and VPs in my organization are comfortable managing from a distance. That one shows is closed right now.
I relaunched it. I think there may be a delay in my launching.
Okay. There we go. I'm super interested in this one. All right. We're in that 70-30 range, 68-32. I'm going to go ahead and end polling now. So that's interesting. About 2/3, a little more than 2/3 say the managers are doing pretty well and we're well prepared for managing at a distance. All right, and then the final question, number 4. The COVID-19 crisis has impacted my company's IT team dynamics. How my team relates to each other. (60-40). Looks like we're narrowing down. I'm going to go ahead and stop polling. Yeah, that's 61-39. Very interesting. Quite close to 2/3 say it has affected, and only 1/3 say it's remained the same. Quite interesting. Audience, thank you very much. We have 147 participants right now, so we're glad to have all of you, and we're glad for you to be involved in the polling. All right, let's get into the questions and the panelists. You've been watching us long enough. Jeff, you want to launch the first question, please?
Absolutely. So we've got 3 of our panelists that are going to respond to this question. And the question is, what challenges have you faced moving quickly to work from home, and how has your team performed? Glenn, why don't we start off with you, if you don't mind, sir? And remember, you're on mute.
All right. I was quick to pull the ear on Doug when he was on mute. Yeah, so the reason I'm laughing, you didn't hear it, but I'm laughing because we had been working a really pesky AOVPN issue with Microsoft, having to do with just the way our network's configured. We had kind of a different configuration than standard, and we had been struggling with this for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden the house is on fire because boom, we got 100 people that weren't working from home. So my team, this was actually a good opportunity for them because it gave them something to focus on. Unfortunately, they were working around the clock to get it taken care of, working with Microsoft, trying patches. Eventually, we got it done. And the irony of it, even though our employees was struggling with the AOVPN issue, they were really, really appreciative of how IT performed and was jumping in. They knew how hard we were working. So, for at least that initial part where we had been very, very busy, the team was really on it. Lots of good esprit de corps and good attitudes all around. We're still busy, so.
Excellent. Thanks, Glenn. Hey, Jeff Dotson, how about you?
Have to get used to that mute button. This is an interesting one for us since, for those that don't know, UnitedHealth One is a component of UnitedHealth Group, which is a massive global organization of over 330,000 people. So almost everything we do is a combination of local IT and corporate IT. In our case, we were the first non-clinical location of UnitedHealth Group to have a confirmed case of COVID-19 in the building. So we literally made the decision on a Tuesday to close the building, and on Wednesday, everybody was working from home. It was surprising to me, actually, how well it went. We were, we had been in a preparation mode for some time, including many of the customer service people who you're not going to issue laptops to were prepared to come back to work and pick up their desktops and take them home. It's again amazing to me how well that went. I think the following day we had a total of 20 ServiceNow tickets for desktops and laptops, and maybe 2/3 of those were normal things and only 1/3 were related to work at home. The VPN service is provided by corporate, and I think it's an interesting fun fact that we're running at about 135,000 concurrent VPN sessions on any day right now. So people were fretting whether the enterprise could handle it or not. They've gone up to a potential capacity of 280,000. So we're not even making it breathe hard yet. We're having more issues, I'm sure, like you are, with WebEx and your local internet provider than we are with VPN. And then most of our team has been preoccupied with the crisis itself. But I think our takeaways is that our team and company were really well prepared. And when everyone's working at home, it's a whole lot more effective than one-off work at home. I think you've probably all been in situations where you're working at home and the real meeting is happening in a conference room where people are on whiteboards and you can't see it. But when everybody's working at home, I think we've found it to be pretty effective. Even some of the people who just would defied the idea of work at home are coming around a little bit. Another interesting takeaway is when you've set up your organization for scaled agile, it seems that helps keep the operation running because you've got localized, empowered teams. They're not waiting on a hierarchical structure to make decisions or move people around. So I think it really works well with the work at home situation.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Jeff. Appreciate that. Laura, what's going on with IPS and what challenges have you guys faced?
Yeah, so contrary to Jeff's story, we are definitely not a global organization. We are very local. I think we got a little lucky. My IT team got a little lucky because about July of 2018, our HR department published a telework policy. Excuse me. And so I thought there was going to be a great big demand. And as they were working on putting that telework policy together, I was working on making sure that we had plenty of VPN capacity, that our licensing was set up for enterprise licensing, not one-offs, and making sure we had all the right instructions for being able to get onto the VPN and that those were out on our service portal so that the day that the board passed it, we would be ready to support it. Well, the board passed it and it sort of came and went as a non-event and nobody particularly cared. And we did not see that demand. But thank goodness that we had that in place, because just like Jeff, it was on a Thursday when we found out that we were not going to be coming back in on Friday. And so, you know, it was at the very end of the day. Lots of our people had already gone home. We in IT had already been talking about this for a very long time, and I had been telling the IT folks, take your computers home with you every night. You may not be able to get back in, and we've got to be able to work. So we were really ready to go at the time that it happened. The other thing that we were lucky about was that about, I don't know, mid-year last year, one of my staff members had been using Teams a lot. And he had been talking about how this was just going, the use of Teams was going to explode and we needed to be ready for it. So as an IT team, we all committed to using Teams in order to do both telework and to hold meetings and to store documents and to do all the things that Teams can do, just so that we would be prepared to support our users if they started using it and wanted to have questions and had questions. And we knew there wasn't a whole lot of demand from the top down, but these free things from Microsoft, that demand never comes from the top down. It always comes from the bottom up. And so we really wanted to be prepared for that bottom up demand. And again, very luckily, we absolutely were prepared for it. We had worked it out into our own processes, but we'd also worked it into our academic processes. Now, all of that let our non-teaching staff stay at home and be able to work, but our teaching staff, our schools had never done e-learning. There was no capacity there whatsoever. We did have a learning management system in place, and some of the schools were using it. They just had never used it from home. They were using it within the classroom. And we only had one person who really was a trainer on that, so she's been pretty bombarded over these last few weeks. But on the plus side, we did already have extensive documentation, and we could refer people to videos and those kinds of things. So they didn't have to have a live trainer. They could actually acquaint themselves via a lot of online documentation. So we are planning on starting the official e-learning Thursday of this week, and we'll see how prepared we are.
Excellent. Thanks, Laura. Doug, you want to take the next question?
Well, next question is, how are you leading through the fear, the stress, and the fast changing priorities? Jeff Dodson, let's start with you.
Great. I'd like to talk about this from two perspectives. One, how the company is leading, and then how I'm specifically leading. So since we are in the healthcare delivery business and healthcare insurance business, the message from our CEO was we were built for this moment. So this was a time for us to step up, and it is amazing what singular aligned focus can do to a group of 330,000 people. it's moving at pace that we're not used to. And one of the things they did quickly was take control of the communication, because we were initially getting way too much from way too many leaders. Everybody was trying to handle their own COVID-19 situation. And they quickly took control of it from a command center perspective and educating all of us on the nature of the pandemic, the risks, how to stay safe and healthy. And the CEO is now doing daily live videos to stay connected, among other things. I think our senior leadership is doing a remarkable job in this situation. What I've done specifically is lean on our cultural values. I think it's my role to help my team stay calm, stay connected, guide them, and be as normal as possible, and provide energy for them. But one of the things that's clearly different is a lot more time empathizing. We have one of my leaders in the last 2 days appears to have contracted the virus, which changes the dynamics immediately. Initially, when we went to work from home, it was like a flood of information. Everybody's now sitting in front of their computer all day, and you're getting instant messages through Jabber and emails, dishing off work and asking questions. It was unbelievably overwhelming, and we had to work our way through that and stay focused on the facts, and we're here to serve. So what I did was to be able to frequently check in. We were doing 3 times a week stand-ups for 30 minutes in the morning, and I increased that to 5 days a week. And we all have regular one-on-ones anyway. We added a virtual happy hour on Friday afternoons, and we make sure that we spend time talking about the situation personally and broadly, and focus on gratitude. We're all grateful that we're meaningfully employed at this point, a part of fighting back against the virus. But it's important to make sure we're channeling these emotions back on a focus on productivity and looking forward. So generally speaking, I think my team is doing well. And there's a little less fear than there was in the beginning. The changing priorities were about adapting to COVID-19, but it's starting to settle down. I am expecting in a couple of weeks for people to start getting antsy, and it'll be a whole new situation to deal with.
Jeff, thanks for that, and we wish the best to your teammate who's been infected. Laura,
Thank you.
tell us about how you're leading through this stress and fear and fast changing priorities.
You know, I thought about this question long and hard. And in some ways, I wonder if I really am being very intentional about how I'm leading through this, because it has been such a fast pace with things changing and pivoting all the time that I'm not so sure I've been able to be intentional about helping people with fear, stress. I think I've done okay on the changing priorities part. And one of the things that I did with that is do the stand-ups every morning. We have them, they're not really stand-ups, they're an hour. We've tried on several occasions to see if we can cut them back to a half hour, and we just can't. There's too much to be done, and it is all task orientation. One of the things that happened on one afternoon was that several of us happened to be on our group just pinging each other about things that had happened that day and sending messages back and forth. And it evolved into one of those virtual happy hours, but it wasn't intentional. It was just because I've got a staff that's been together for a long time. They like each other, and they're fine with just kind of evolving things in that fashion. So by 4:30, we were doing a share your 80s hair picture theme on our team's chat. So we do take some time to do those virtual water cooler conversations. just to see how everybody is and check in on that sort of thing. But we don't spend a whole lot of time on that because our real focus has been, how are we going to make sure that kids can go back to school, even if they're going back to school in their own home. And so a part of my leadership in this has been trying to anticipate what is the next thing that is going to be needed. The very first thing was, how do we get devices out to our students? And so when that kind of got moving, then I started looking at, okay, how are we going to support those devices? Because my team has never supported students or families directly. We support through the intermediary, which is the teacher, the principal in the building. And then the third thing was, now what happens if I have a device that breaks? I've always been able to just send somebody to a building to pick that up. How do I swap that out? And then finally, we've been working to expand our IT service desk in a matter of like days, in order to take the calls from our families without breaking the bank. And that's been a challenge as well. And of course, every time we think we've got it, something changes. Today I had it all nailed down and somebody said, well, what about Spanish language? Did you do Spanish language? And I said, no, and I went back to the drawing board. So it really is a matter of trying to stay ahead of everything that needs to be anticipated. Sometimes I get it, and sometimes I miss one, like Spanish language.
Thank you, Laura. Jay Lytle, talk to us about how you're leading through fear, stress, and fast-changing priorities.
I can tell you what I'm doing. I can't tell you whether it's successful or not. So I also gave a lot of thought to this, and I think intuitively kind of asked myself a question, or regularly asked myself a question of what does the team need? What do team members need in this crisis? And it has shifted. I think the fear has dwindled a little bit from where it was about 3 weeks ago. But, I think the answer to that is they need to feel personally connected to their team members. They need to know that both myself, my leadership, and those around them care. We oftentimes talk about work family, and I've seen that come together more here than maybe any other time, where everybody kind of needs their work family. And the last thing is also they need confidence in their leadership. So they need to know that we're looking to the future, that we're trying to do what Laura said and think of what's the next thing coming, and that we're taking action steps in that direction, and that we're giving good direction. And that's a balance sometimes, being empathetic and caring, and then also being strong and providing that guidance. So, I think it's that balancing act that we're all trying to accomplish. So, kind of some of the things we've done. So we already had a weekly Monday morning. It was 30 minutes. We went through about 25 to 30 individuals in 30 minutes. And it was, just a stand-up type meeting. But something we put in place a few months ago was where people would give a color. When they were done giving their update, they would give a color of green, yellow, or red, and it was their stress level. And it was fortunate we started that prior to this, because people were already in the habit of that. And that's been very, even prior to this, that's been very helpful. We've extended that meeting, like most everybody, to be a full hour. And, we asked something a little more personal, try to change it up, but it's tell us something fun you did this weekend, just trying to get people open up and talk about something a little bit more personal. So that's kind of a larger group. Each team has 2 meetings a day. They meet early in the morning for 15 minutes, and they meet in the afternoon for 15 minutes. And most of my managers are, one of the 2 of the meetings are pretty serious about work and what their objectives are and getting things done. And the second meeting is a little bit more low key, right? It is a little bit more of a stress relieving meeting. And so all the different teams of, anywhere between 3 to 6 or 7 individuals are having those twice a day. So that's kind of how we're doing it. I'm also, a number of leaders in our organization are doing this, is just calling individuals. So I pick a couple individuals a day that I'm going to call, even if they're, it doesn't matter. They don't have to be reporting to me. I've called our senior director of HR. I've called, programmers and tier 2 help desk folks. And work always comes up. It's always a part of the conversation, but generally it's just, how are you doing? How can I help you? And that those conversations end up going both ways. They ask the same thing of me, which is appreciative. But that's kind of what I'm doing. And by the way, our CEO, Kent Kramer, he's done the same thing with me, giving me calls. And in our executive staff meetings, not everyone, but every couple, he asks the question, hey, how are you guys dealing with this? What are you doing? Are you running? What are you doing yoga? What is, are you Netflix binging? What are you doing to help manage the stress yourself? Because it's not just our teams that are feeling this, it's all of us.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. Jeff, back to you.
So that was a great segue, Jay. It's almost like we rehearsed it. How are you dealing with mass furloughs and layoffs, making tough changes while being compassionate? Glenn, let's start with you on that one.
Yeah, for this particular one, this isn't really something that's impacted us yet. We're talking about it. We've prepared for it. Our position is, first of all, we're an oil and gas company, and when our CEO put it really well, he said this is like a double black swan event for us. So we're there's a price war going on between Saudi Arabia and Russia right now that's driving the price of crude oil down through the floor, which really impacts us. That cuts our margin dramatically, and that's what it's intended to do. This is not aimed at Russia or Saudi Arabia. It's aimed at the U.S. So they would like to put U.S. producers out of business, and in oil terminology, the producers are the guys that pull the oil up out of the ground and then get it to the refinery. So we actually have a production arm. So we explore and get oil up out of the ground and kind of sell it through intercompany sales. So this is definitely hurting us. So we're in a situation where, obviously our margin is dropping through the floor, not unheard of in the oil and gas business. It's a tough business, a little bit like airlines. However, where the second swan comes in is with the COVID crisis, because now we've got people that are not buying, and that doesn't happen. It's not the way this business works. When the price goes down, people buy more, and every oil and gas company in the country and in the world, really, this is a global problem, is swimming in gasoline. We can sell diesel, but the physics of the chemistry is you can't make diesel without making gasoline. So everybody's trying to figure out what to do with their gasoline. Everybody's stuck with it. So this is really hurting us, right? So low margin, very, very few sales. As Narav can attest, nobody's flying, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really hurt us. And our CEO has been very upfront with employees. He's tried to calm them. Everybody in the company knows we have a very, very strong balance sheet. We carry no debt. We had a really good year last year. We've got enough cash on hand that our board is always concerned that we're not investing enough of it. So, you know, it's going to come in handy for the next few months. I mean, there will come a time where we have to think about it. Everybody's worried about it, obviously. But, you know, in the meantime, we've done some things to reassure employees. We were very quick with extended sick pay way before it was mandated or even talked about by the government. And so we've tried to get out in front of the employees. So I think, you know, when we have to do those things, they're going to see that the company was out there really trying to do the right thing. So, you know, we just didn't pull the trigger and say, oops, we can't do this. We are critical infrastructure. We have to keep running. You know, probably for us to shut down would cause a whole lot of ripples for other people too in the industry. So that's kind of the position we're in. But it depends on how long this goes on. Depends on how soon people start flying and driving again. Suck some of that gasoline out of the system. So that's kind of what we've done, and I think our CEO has done an excellent job so far of leading us through this, Jeff.
Thanks a lot, Glenn. Nirav, I'd love to hear from you and how you and Republic are dealing with this.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me good?
Absolutely.
Thumbs up? All right, great. Oh, great. So thank you for inviting me, by the way, Jeff and Doug, both of you. Great panel discussion so far. Glenn teed up right for me. Glenn wants me to use a lot of his gasoline by flying, apparently. And unfortunately, we aren't flying a lot these days. So, our flying has gone down to almost 15% right now. So we usually do around 1,200 flights a day. We are doing 150, 200 flights a day these days. We were actually very much on the front end of this. So as people started realizing, and as we went into the second half of March, and we had governors of different states coming out and coming up with stay-at-home orders, we had actually started to see this coming early in March. You know, we see a lot of cancellations from airlines. We were seeing our planes with half the capacity filled early March. So we had started to see a lot earlier. However, our position on this specific question has been, Republic was positioned very well. Republic, very similar to what Glenn mentioned, we had very little debt on our balance sheet, a lot of cash in hand. We were on a growth trajectory over the last 2 years with almost 23 to 24% growth over the last 2 years. So, and there was additional growth built in for this year around another 15% or so. So just like many other companies, we were positioned for great progress this year. So when this happened, our executive team and our leadership team has been very, very particular about not reacting quickly in terms of layoffs or furlough. So as much as, we turn the news channel on and we hear about how much airlines are struggling and losing billions of dollars on a monthly basis, we also don't want to take many steps backward because we do believe successfully we are going to come out of this. All of us are going to come out of this. There is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And when that happens, us and Republic wants to be in a position that we can capitalize on a much bigger strategic moves that we have. So we haven't done any furlough at this point. We do not plan to do anything recently. We actually have applied for the stimulus package. So many of us know about the CARES package, and $25 billion is set aside as a grant for the airline industry, right? The problem with that, however, is the government is doing it in the right way in terms of covering the payroll. They do not want us to, lay off our people. They do understand they are the most important and the critical resources. However, to cover the payroll for the entire airline industry for Q2 and Q3, you're looking at a total of $40 billion. The grant is at $25 billion. So there is already inherent a gap as we go into this. So at that point, we have to start thinking of a more creative way to bridge the gap. And that's what Republic's doing. We are having discussions around, salary, executive salaries, as well as bonuses, as well as the board of directors have given up our salary as well. And we will do everything in our power to save every single job that we could, because we believe over the last 2 to 3 years, we have made heavy investment in our people. We are setting us for a long-term success, and we don't want to just make a decision in a month's time and take plenty of steps back. So we are being very mindful of that. The second part of the question, Jeff, you have there is a critical one, right? At some point in a leader's life, you have to make those decisions and you have to make the tough choices, right? And I think Jay alluded to this. To me, the most important and the critical thing in all of these is the empathy, is the emotional intelligence that a leaders bring into the connection they have built with the team, the transparency, the bond that they have established with the team is going to be very important right now more than ever. I believe that the leadership has to be very clear in their communication, do it as often as possible. I believe in what I like to call as a mindful leadership, where you create a safe space for your team and you can openly discuss all those issues. So I personally do a department meeting twice or at least thrice a week. I personally call a lot of folks on a daily basis, 3 or 4 people on my department as well as my peers. And it's important to talk to them more often. Everybody's anxious. Everybody's family is anxious. What's going to happen? They turn the news on and they hear about an airline industry and then immediately start asking about, are you going to have a job tomorrow? So more than ever, this is where the leadership has to play the most important and the critical role. One thing that I've always, I've heard it someplace and it has stuck with me is in a leadership position, when we have to make decisions, we should not make decisions based on head counts. We should make it based on heart counts. And when we start thinking it that way, you'll add a completely different perspective to how you make those decisions, right? Our belief, my belief, our Republic's belief is, we should all suffer a little than any one of us suffering a lot. So that's what we're going to go forward with. We'll all get through this together, and hopefully we'll come on the other side in a much more successful than we went into this.
Thank you, Nirav. I love that heart count versus head count. That is a great way to look at things. Jay, talk to us a little bit about what's going on at Goodwill and how you guys are making these tough choices and managing these tough changes.
Sure. Yeah, this is a tough one. We unfortunately have had to make quite a few furloughs and a few layoffs. So what was it? About 3 weeks ago, all of our Goodwill stores closed their doors. So the cash registers stopped ringing, and as you might imagine, that was the financial engine for our not-for-profit. It funds a number of our other philanthropies. Outside of retail, what is going strong is we run about 15 charter high schools for adults, and we've had to make the shift to remote. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to lend a hand to getting 600 Chromebooks set up for students. So that side's still going strong. We have a nursing program that's still going very strong. They typically do home visitation, so they've had to make the shift to remote, and we've had to help support with that. But our retail, the other thing that is gangbusters right now is our manufacturing facility. We do contract manufacturing, and our largest clients are in the medical spaces where we make various medical equipment and products. And that's going well, but still, 70–80% of our revenue is retail, and that's come to a halt. And because of that, we have had to furlough roughly 2,500 individuals out of a company that has about 4,300 individuals. In that, the support departments, including IT, they didn't dodge that bullet. So we've been hit pretty hard, as well as marketing and HR and finance and most of the support departments. So I think there are two parts to this, and one is, how do you do it? And that's tough. I think if I use two words, it's empathy and honesty, right? It is, when you're meeting with the employees and they know you've done everything you can, they know why the decisions are being made, and you are very upfront with them. It goes a little bit better. But then it's also clarity. I mean, you've just dropped a bomb on individuals, and they need to know what are the next steps. So, whether or not that's, for those being laid off, that might be, what's medical look like? What supports are there for them? It is telling them very, very sequentially, this is how it's going to go, and these are the resources you have. And that's tough, and we've had to do that. The next piece is communicating with your teams that are still there, right? We've been talking about your work family. So one of your work family member is no longer here, and you got to help pick up that duty and their workload. And, they need to know why. And you need to be honest with them and empathetic with them, and they need to know you care. But they also need to know you have a plan. They need to know that this isn't going to be a reoccurring every week, that you were forward thinking as a company and as leadership, and that they're your team. You kept them. They are the foundation of what the organization is going to look like moving forward. And you got to give them hope, right? And that's a very important message as well. So that's we did some of those late last week, so it's pretty fresh with us. And this week we're picking up the pieces, and it's hard, but I think I would lean on honesty, empathy, and hope.
Thank you, Jay. I know it's been an incredibly tough few weeks. Doug, back to you for the next question.
Thanks, Jeff. How has community support and the value of relationships and partnerships affected you, your team, and your organization? And panelists, I'm going to ask you to be as brief as possible. Attendees, we are going to go over our hour. So if you're willing to stick with us, we're willing to stick with you. But I think these are important issues, and we'd love to share those with you. Nirav, if you could start on this one, please.
Absolutely. And I'll try to be brief, but there's a famous saying, which is prosperity makes friends and adversity tries them, right? And that's exactly what's going on right now. We are getting a lot of support from a lot of our partners in the industry, friends, just many of the panelists here as well, right? We are seeing financial assistance. Everybody knows cash in hand is very critical right now. We are seeing offers of delayed payments to moving from a yearly to quarterly to monthly invoices. Payment terms are changing, free licenses right now. We have a consulting company that's offered us to continue doing work with us and just invoices when we call them, and they don't care whenever. It's a year from now when we are cash positive to just call them and they'll invoice us at that time. So definitely we are seeing an unprecedented support. There is clearly a belief that it's not an airline industry problem or a specific industry problem. This is a world problem. We are in this together. We'll get out of this together. And then the last piece from our specific team perspective, it's great to see the productivity is high. It's highest as it ever been, in spite of all of us working at home. And I think it goes to what Jeff said earlier. It's because all of us are working at home and not a part of the team working at home. So great to see the community stepping up and helping each other.
Thanks, Nirav. Jeff, how about you? How's community support and the relationships that you have and the partners affected your ability to deliver in these tough times.
So I'd like to answer this one in the perspective that UnitedHealth Group is a major player in supporting the community rather than us receiving support. We continue to lean heavily on our cultural values. I just want to run down quickly what that support looks like to the community. And it begins with our 70,000 clinicians at Optum Care that are on the front lines serving 18 million patients through our primary care practices, urgent care, inpatient homes, and nursing homes. And it's interesting that our enterprise supply chain professionals have made sure we've heard no complaints from those clinicians about personal protective equipment and supplies. And in fact, UnitedHealth Group, you may have seen it, has innovated a new form of testing that it's not the swab that goes way back in your head. They've proven that what to me looks like a regular Q-tip is equally as effective and also protects the healthcare professional, because when that test is administered, they're either sneezing or vomiting on the healthcare professional, which now means they've got to replace all that personal protective equipment. On the insurance side, as many of you probably know, all the member cost sharing has been waived for testing and now treatment. Optum has made their emotional support line open to anyone. You don't even have to be a member of any kind. Virtual visits have scaled immensely. And in the beginning, it was, if you are sick, use the virtual visit line to check with your doctor to see if you've got COVID-19. It's expanded to anyone who doesn't want to be in an office with someone who has COVID-19. So that capability has now also been offered with any cost sharing waive. As I listen to how the federal government is using analytics to track what's going on, UnitedHealth Group is doing the same. Our internal analytics capabilities are amazing, and they're watching how things shift, and they're reacting accordingly. On a different note, in Minneapolis, where UnitedHealth Group is headquartered, there were about 24 chefs that decided to take business into their own hands, and they started cooking at home and supplying meals to folks in Minneapolis and distributing them through loaves and fishes. And that evolved into bringing them all back into the cafeteria and making meals for folks in the Twin Cities. They're distributing about 21,000 meals through a food service called Compass and Second Harvest. Lastly, a $50 million donation to help support those that have been disproportionately affected. So $30 million has gone to efforts to protect and support healthcare workers. $10 million to support states where COVID-19 is having an outsized impact, starting with New York, New Jersey, Washington, California, and Florida. $5 million to address social isolation among seniors, which is a big deal to senior health. And $5 million to provide care and support for people experiencing food issues, whether that's food insecurity or homelessness. So I think I'm proud to be a part of this group, and I think they're providing tremendous support for the community itself.
Wow, super impressive, Jeff. Laura, how's the community support and the relationships that IPS has changing things?
Well, I can tell you we wouldn't be where we are if it weren't for all of the community support we've been getting. Eli Lilly, Salesforce have been long-term partners, and they've come to the table again. I know I will leave out people who have done a lot of work with us because that's not the area I play in, but there are so many corporate people and organizations who've come forward in order to say, how can we help? And it's just been kind of overwhelming. And I don't mean just with money. Lilly actually had some of their people help us with the logistics of how we were going to mail 5,300 devices and get them out to the students. I mean, this is not something we do. We don't mail stuff. That's not our business. And so they have a business line that actually does a lot of that. And they brought those people in to help us figure out exactly how we needed to move forward on that. I will tell you that we've leveraged a lot of our IT partnerships. I was talking about the service desk earlier, and we work with Bell Technologies, which is a local company service desk provider, and they have worked diligently. I mean, it started this weekend when all of a sudden I got a frantic call from one of my leaders, and so I ended up calling them and saying, how can we spin up this call center very quickly? And today we're signing contract, and Thursday we'll have people ready to take calls when they get those devices at their homes. That's a pretty amazing kind of turnaround. But we're not just a receiver, we're also a giver, because we feed kids every single day, 365 days a year in our schools. And now that they are at home, we've committed to continuing to do that. We have federal funding through the USDA that allows us to prepare breakfast, lunch, and dinner and provide that to our students and on a daily basis. And we've paired up with Gleaner's Food Bank in order to also hand out shelf-stable foods at those times, and doing that in lots of different neighborhoods where the needs are highest. So I don't think any of us would be where we are today, not just IPS. None of us would be where we are today if it weren't for the community relationships. When you see that hashtag "in it together," it's absolutely true. It's what it's going to take to get through this and come out the other side.
Thanks for reminding us of the good that IPS is doing for the community, Laura. Jeff, over to you.
Absolutely. So one last question for our panelists, and I'm going to ask you guys to answer briefly on this, but we thought we'd end on a more personal note. So how has family dealt with the extreme togetherness, or in some cases the isolation from everyone else? So how has your family been dealing with this? So Nirav, let's start with you.
Absolutely. So it's been great for us. It's me, my wife. We have a 9-year-old boy, and we have my wife's cousin who was studying at Penn State. So we called him over here. He's from India, so he couldn't make his trip back to India. So we called him. He's staying with us for 3 weeks. It's been great. When initially it came out that the schools were shut, and we knew it would probably never open for the school year, everybody else was like, "Oh, what are we going to do?" And my wife was like, "You know what? Not all the learning happens in school. So this is a great opportunity for us to provide our son a lot of things that we cannot do on a regular school days and all the activities." So we're just taking advantage of that. We play a lot of games. For me personally, my family, everyone in my family, my wife's family is back home in India. So we do a lot of Zoom call. We play games over Zoom, and we stay connected. I think this is a very different. None of us planned for it, but I think we're making the most of it.
Excellent. Thanks, Nirav. Jay, how about you?
Well, my 12-year-old and 15-year-old now know how to play poker. They've also learned euchre, and we also play quite a bit of Uno. So we're doing pretty well. The fighting among siblings, it was significant the first week, but I think they got it out of their system. Now they're either okay with each other or just fatigued. I don't know which, but we're doing okay.
Glad to hear that. Laura, how are things in your household?
Well, I think I'm kind of lucky in this regard as well. I can tell you that I very much like my husband, and he seems to like me. So I don't think we're going to be one of those divorce statistics on the other end of this. We do not have any littles at home. We are empty nesters, but I have grandchildren in town, and I miss them terribly. And so we've had to do the virtual thing as well. And I've actually learned how to do all kinds of things over Zoom, Facebook, Teams, no matter whatever they are accustomed to, I will adapt to. I never thought I would ever say that I actually played Barbies over the computer, but I have. I do want to reflect just a little humor in Nirav. He said that they were thinking about, well, not all learning happens in schools. And so I thought I would share something that my mom, who was a school teacher, used to say frequently, which was she never let her children's schooling interfere with their education. So good for you, Nirav.
Awesome.
Thank you, Laura. Glenn, how are things at the Keller household?
Things are going pretty well. In our family, my daughter's 24 and she's a senior at IU Kokomo, and she commutes. She's home. So the only difference is that we're just home a little more than we would be. So as far as how we're taking it, I think my wife kind of likes it. I'm spending a little bit of extra time that I've been gaining back from commuting, doing a little more of the cooking and that sort of thing. And as far as my daughter's concerned, when I asked her how she felt about it, she just said, well, what do you mean? It's like everybody else is just adapting my chosen lifestyle, so it's fine with me.
There you go. That's a good outlook. Mr. Dotson, how about you guys?
Yeah, so my wife and I are classic empty nesters, downsized into a condo downtown. So like Laura, I'm happy to report we have discovered we still like each other. The interesting thing was we in our downsizing, we had no suitable work at home set up, so we had to quickly figure that out so that we could be behind closed doors. She is a high school math teacher at Pike, and they were prepared to do e-learning, so there's a lot of noise coming from that other room. But we've been enjoying it. It's nice. We are working, and we've extended the virtual happy hours from not just my coworkers, but also with my children.
Hey, there you go. That's a great idea. Sounds like everybody is doing well. Appreciate you guys sharing that. Doug, back over to you.
Yeah, just a couple of things to add to this. I know a lot of you are looking for your next opportunity, whether it is because of COVID-19 crisis, or whether you might have been looking and feel like you're at a standstill right now. If you have a resume, please contact Jeff and contact me. We both have big networks and lots of recruiters that we work with that we can help socialize your resume. And I can tell you firsthand that this community is more than willing to find slots for people. So please send those over. We have got some questions from the audience, and we're going to end this at 6:15. So I just want to field a couple of these. We've got some questions that were associated with who's using Teams and Zoom and WebEx. I think we're going to maybe put a survey together on the follow-up to get a little bit more information about that, along with some tips on being a good, highly etiquette-minded conference call attendee. Wearing pants is usually in that list, as we said in the original survey. Question for Laura. There were some questions about Hamilton Southeastern only having a small portion of their folks log in because of some Canvas licensing, it looks like, or technology issues. Were you able to prepare in advance for that sort of thing, or are you just taking those challenges as they come?
Well, I will tell you that we've got a strategy toward home learning. We are not calling it e-learning. Some of it is more supported by the E than others. So all of our kids who are taking high school classes will be receiving a device if their parents tell us that they need one. We are also doing our best to try to close the gap in internet access. So our first priority is to make sure that those kids who have started the path toward graduation can actually continue down that path. We have gone to paper packets that are posted out on our website and are also being mailed to homes, because we do not anticipate that most of our families have printers to be able to do that. And also that will be supplemented by some other e-learning for those who have it. But this is kind of a place where this digital divide and the inequities that it pervades in our society becomes so acute, because we find that we have the ability to teach in a way that is so rich and capable right now, because we have an LMS in place, because we have Google Classroom, because we have all the Teams and the Access and the Zoom. We have all of this rich environment, and yet we have so many who do not have a means of accessing it. It keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And it becomes to light right now. These are the situations where those differences come clearly to light. Thank you for that. Jeff, Mike Easley over at American Senior Communities asked a little bit about the emotional support line. Do you mind if I connect you two via email? I'll go ahead and do that.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Great. Nan Braun asked about what do we see as being permanently shifted. And there were some other questions about lowering expenses while optimizing performance of the organization. And some leadership questions as well. We are unfortunately very short on time, but I have good news. As you can see on the screen, we are going to do another one of these meetings. And I think our original title was What the Hell Do We Do Now? But I think we're planning on doing a What Do We Do Now session with the same group here in the next few weeks. We're not sure right now if that's going to be when we start going back to work, or if it's just going to be a few weeks from now as we're a little more set inside of this program and this work from home idea. But we are going to do it again. And Nan, especially some of your questions, the idea of what do we see as permanently changing? We actually chopped those questions off of this presentation to save them for the next one. So every one of you, all the panelists, I want to thank you again for being so generous with your time. Jeff, thanks for hosting as well.
Doug, thank you. And thanks to Karen for being the support behind the scenes, and to Expedient for the use of the platform, and Karen. So thank you so much. Appreciate the partnership, my friend.
Likewise, we're glad to have all of you. This session has been recorded. We will be following up with a link to the recording, and we will take a good hard look at a survey on some of the more mechanical components of work from home. I hope you all have a great evening, and go ahead and start your second drink. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.